we go to the agenda. Deputy members.
Apologies for absence with Councillor Small, Councillor Reid. Thank you.
And then we come Vice Chair, not on the agenda.
Thank you, Chair. May I consider naming?
Naming?
Thank you.
Other proposals? Is that agreed? Thank you. So, come up with your nameplate.
Chair, was that just for this meeting? Not
Sorry?
that was just for this meeting?
Yes.
Oh, all right.
The Vice Chair for the year has been appointed. Sorry. But she's just not here today. Welcome, Councillor Laming. Next item on the agenda, disclosures of interest.
Thank you, Chair. I've received one disclosure of interest from Councillor Small, who's declaring a personal but non-prejudicial interest in respect of item 7, as the landlords are known to her, but she's taken no part in discussions regarding the application, so we'll speak and vote thereon. Thank you.
Thank you. And I too would like to declare an interest for item 7. I do know the agent, but I haven't had any part in the application before today. Moves us on to the minutes of the previous meeting, which in our reports are pages 9 to 12. Are those agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. And then could we please accept the update sheet, which is as addendum to the reports that we agreed. Thank you very much. Which takes us on then to the first application, which is 3 King Alfred Place, Winchester, case number 19-02225/FUL. This is the demolition of an existing 2-storey detached property, construction of a 2-storey replacement dwelling with associated landscaping, and these are amended plans. Case officer is Catherine Watson, but unfortunately she's not well today, and so Megan Osborne will be the case officer today. So Megan, when you're ready, we're ready to hear the presentation.
Yeah.
Megan, can you bring the microphone right to you?
Yeah, can everyone hear? The application site is located within Winchester City Centre, an area known as Hyde. The site is a triangular shaped plot which tapers out to the north. To the west of the site there is a watercourse known as the Nuns Stream, and to the west of this is Saxon Road, and to the south of the site is King Alfred Place. The site is located within Winchester Conservation Area, and its close proximity to a number of listed buildings, which include the Grade 1 listed Abbey Gate, which is also a scheduled monument. Yeah. There is an existing detached single-storey, 1.5-storey house on the site with a garage that is accessed to on the northeastern corner of the site off a small access road to the side of the dwelling. This is showing the existing elevations, showing the 1.5-storey house, and this is the view from the west from Saxon Road, looking towards the site, and this is the house on the right and the detached garage. The proposal is the one to the south, The proposal is for the demolition of the existing house and replaced with a 2-storey dwelling. The design is contemporary in style and split into 2 elements with a glazed link joining them, both with flat green roofs. The proposal is located within a development boundary of Winchester, where the principle of replacement dwellings is acceptable, subject to development according with other relevant planning policies. These are the proposed floor plans of the development. It's a 4-bedroom dwelling with 1 bedroom on the ground floor. The top slide here shows the ground floor proposal with the bedroom here and the 3 bedrooms on the top floor. And this is the roof plan. Going through the elevations, this is the south elevation, the view from King Alfred Place looking at the site. And this is the north elevation, looking from the flats to the north of the site. And this is the rear east elevation, looking along the access road where the current access to the building is. And this is the west elevation, looking from Saxon Road towards the proposal. These are some street scenes, proposed street scene elevations. So on the top is the elevation, if you're looking towards it from King Alfred Place, looking north. On the left-hand side, that is Saxon Road. And the right-hand side, the houses on King Alfred Place. And the south is the view from the west, the western elevation, sorry. Looking from Saxon Road towards the proposal, the flats on your left of the screen there. To take you through some photos, currently standing on King Alfred Place, looking towards the application site here, with the house you can see on the right-hand side, and again a bit further forward, similar view of the property. This is going further, the one on the left is further back down King Alfred Place, looking towards the site. You can't really see it from here. It's further up the road. This is the application site here, which is a 1.5-storey building that's currently on the site, which is proposed to be demolished. This is standing on Saxon Road, looking towards the site. So you've got the stream, which runs along here, and the existing building is here. This is where the proposed would go. This is standing at the Abbey Gate, the Grade 1 listed building, looking towards the site here, straight in front of you. And this is the other side of Abbey Gate. So the site is, this is looking down towards the stream. So I'm standing in the corner of King Alfred Place and Saxon Road, looking along the stream. So the site is on the right-hand side here, the boundary treatment, and this is the existing dwelling here, proposed to be demolished. And this is standing looking along Saxon Road and the stream here. Right. This is the site on the right-hand side. This is the site. If you stand on the access road and the existing parking into the site, and the single-storey garage, which is to be demolished, and the property here beyond, and this is Saxon Road. And this is looking up that access road towards the dwelling, the other view up towards the access. This is within the site, so the garage is on the left-hand side of the screen, and to the right below this fence line is the stream, and this is the existing dwelling here. And this is standing in the site again, and the stream along here on Saxon Road. This is within the one hand, on the right-hand side is within the site again with the stream to the right-hand side here, and Saxon Road, you can see that where that bike is, Saxon Road. The proposal has evolved over the 3 years of this application, and that it has been with the local planning authority, following comments from officers and consultees. The originally submitted scheme was assessed by officers and amendments have been made which are considered to be an improvement. This slide shows the differences between the previous proposals and the proposals in front of you today. The one at the top of the screen is the previous proposal, and the one at the bottom is the one you have in front of you today. The building is now set further away from the boundary with Saxon Road and the stream, and a hedge has been put along to soften this boundary. And the top part of the screen is the originally proposed scheme, and the bottom half is what's proposed recently and what's in front of you today. The materials have been changed to soften it and be more in context with the surrounding area. The elevations are now more textures in appearance, with hit and miss bricks along the lower part of the building. The principle of a replacement dwelling within the settlement boundary is acceptable. The proposal is for a contemporary family home which responds well to the character of the surrounding area and preserves the character of the conservation area in respect of its form, materials and detailing. It's not considered to have a significantly harmful impact on the setting of Hyde Abbey Gate, and on balance, the proposal is considered to be acceptable and complies with the relevant national and local plan policies and guidance. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Megan. And so we now move to the public speaking. And our first person is the an objector, Penny Stewart. Good morning. Yeah, do move it nearer to you, and then there's a button at the bottom to press. And then you have 3 minutes, and the clock, is the clock coming on the screen?
This resubmitted application has done nothing to allay the fears of the objectors, who number over 160 in total. The building remains wholly unsuitable for this site, which is in the centre of the Hyde Conservation Area. This is a prominent setting, and it is surrounded by buildings of the Victorian era and earlier. Hyde Gate, a Grade 1 listed National Scheduled Monument, is immediately adjacent, within 50 metres, and St Bartholomew's Church, Grade 2 listed, is close enough to be affected. Both the gate and the church have very steeply pitched roofs. In fact, the majority of the buildings adjacent to the application site have pitched roofs. However, the proposed unashamedly flat roof, densely massed, blocking structure has nothing in common with any of the buildings around it, in direct contravention of Win 3 and the High Quality Places Supplementary Planning Document, as well as local plan policies such as Win 1, Win 2, WT1, CP20, and the National Planning Policy Framework. In particular, the roof shape has a significant impact on the character and appearance of the overall design, as well as the scale and the massing, and renders the whole structure out of context with the buildings around it on all sides. It is a contemporary building which, far from being clearly deferential to the gateway, as asserted by the applicant, makes a statement in direct contradiction to the medieval structure. There is no attempt to avoid or minimise any conflict between Hyde Gate and any aspect of the proposal. In the Winchester Conservation Area Appraisal in September 2017, it is said, the design of the housing, roads and spaces in Hyde Gate could be redeveloped in a way which is more sympathetic to the physical qualities and historical importance of the 14th century Abbey Gatehouse. It should defer to the gateway. This building does nothing to do this, contrary to the policies already cited. The city's conservation area is described by Historic England as at risk and on a deteriorating trend. The proposed building intrudes into the special intimate character of Hyde and fails to respect local distinctiveness, especially in terms of characteristic materials, trees, build form and layout, tranquility, sense of place and setting. St Swithin's and the Pilgrim's Way from Winchester to Canterbury goes directly along Saxon Road, and people come from all over the world to see Highgate and the church. The proposed building is very abrupt, makes for a hard, unyielding silhouette, and will dominate this little plot. In conclusion, if this application is approved, it will constitute an unduly intrusive form of development, detrimental to the character and appearance of the unique place that is Hyde. If you don't know this part of Hyde, I would urge to adjourn this application and arrange a site visit, particularly as no photos of Hyde Gate have been included in the report.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Please stay
Do
where
I
you are.
switch it off now?
Yes, yes, but no, please stay where you are. Please, could we not have any applause or boos even, because we are a council meeting and this is not appropriate. So it could be that the members of the committee wish you to answer questions of clarification. Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I do have one. Has the applicant had any conversations with the residents to try and arrive at something that works to all your satisfaction?
The first applicant had us around for drinks and we met. We haven't had any contact at all. And from my point of view and our point of view is that people need to work with the residents and be mindful of what is happening, particularly as it's such an important site.
Thank you. Any further questions? No. So thank you very much indeed for coming along today. And we now move on to one of the ward councillors, Councillor John Tippett-Cooper. Good morning. And you have 5 minutes when you're ready, and the clock will come up on the screen.
I'll do my best, Chair. 5 minutes. So firstly, to confirm an interest that I have in the specific application insofar as I live on King Alfred Terrace, which if you look out the window, you can't quite see this, but I am in the road parallel, albeit a 2-minute walk away. So just declaring that. But in fact, I'd hope my proximity and indeed embedded nature in that part of the community is helpful in terms of understanding why there is real concern about this application. And indeed, I share those concerns. So this site is in effect in effectively a golden triangle of heritage sites where we've got St Bart's Church, Hyde Gate and Hyde Abbey Garden. It's a magnificent area, and the houses in the site generally are in keeping with the sort of the historic and cultural sort of theme of the entire area. And you'll note that there are a slightly astonishing 156 objections to this proposal. And anecdotally, I can assure you there would be many more, but for I suppose not everyone follows the planning application list as closely as we all do. And you've already heard a very articulate objection from Ms. Stewart, and I think that reflects broadly a lot of the concerns that are around this proposal. And indeed, you can read that in more detail excuse me for my references, there's a summary, albeit it's a brief summary, and I appear, which is going to be extraordinarily frustrating, to have lost the relevant references on my iPad, but I will do my absolute best in the absence of that. If I could take you to page 18 of the recommendation document, and that should have, yes, indeed. So that's where you see the sort of summary of the objections, and I urge you to sort of reflect on those. The actual objections themselves are more detailed than that, but it's a sort of fair and accurate reflection of the sort of general objections that have come in. There were 16 supportive representations, and indeed on that, I mean, I note the summary there. The current property on the site is in need of some improvement, and I think redevelopment generally is not something that the Hyde community and wider community are opposed to. This is not a NIMBY objection from people. This is a genuine and serious concern about the impact of a really important heritage site. And although a contemporary design of a building is entirely reasonable, and indeed a green building is absolutely commendable, there are different ways of doing it. And I think the current site isn't that way. So, going through it in a bit more detail, I mean, you've heard from Penny Stewart about the relevant planning provisions that are engaged here, and I won't go into that and repeat it because my time. There are jarring design features, there's no doubt about that. It's been described as brutalist and extremely out of keeping with the surrounding area and character of the site. And the flat roof is just one of the issues that's raised. And indeed, the concern is raised about the flat roof in the papers. I think it's at page 23 that identifies and acknowledges that it's not typical of the surrounding area. And just if I can take you to page 24 and assessing the analysis of the impact on historic environment, it refers to page 24 there being this design causing less than substantial harm to the historic environment of the site. But the remaining content of the recommendation suggests that that is indeed harm to the historic environment. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And broadly speaking, the level of harm caused by a particular design on a heritage site is going to be a subjective judgment. And you will have heard loud and clear from the community about what their subjective judgment is of that. And I'd ask you to also apply your own instinct as around how this building fits and sits with the surrounding area. So looking at it in more detail, at page 25, officers have put emphasis on the, broadly speaking, the statutory requirement to assess where there is harm to a site, what are the public benefits of the application that may outweigh that harm. The benefits given here, I don't think are quite substantial enough, to be honest. The three are given one that there's a high. There's a high. I'm going to
have to stop you there.
Oh, I've run out of time.
Councillor, I'm sorry, your time is up.
But I would just say, Chair, just please assess those public benefits and consider them that any development would meet those public benefits, and also appreciate that high. Your time is up. Thank you very much. I'm sorry, and of course Highgate, the actual redevelopment and redesign of it hasn't been added.
Councillor, could you now finish?
Sorry, Councillor.
Thank you.
Sorry, Chair, I'm very sorry. Very disrespectful.
Thank you very much.
I apologise.
So, committee, are there any further questions of clarification for one of the ward councillors? Councillor Pearson.
Yeah, Councillor referred to the potential flood risk. Is there a history of flooding? Immediate area.
Councillor Pearson, I can't give you a completely confident answer one way or another. I would say though that any flood risk has to be taken into account. Any historical flood risk has to take into account the future risk of, the increased presence of that risk due to climate change and increased rainfalls. You'll note that Nuns Stream Wall collapsed 18 months ago. Arguably, that was after and as a result of a heavy rainfall period, which sort of unprecedented levels of rainfall in a short space of time. So you can imagine that there are always going to be concerns that history can't necessarily give you an answer for.
You're not sure that there is a flood risk?
Not sure.
Okay,
thank you.
Very much.
That might be, Councillor Pearson, a question that you want to ask of the case officer when we get to that point. Yeah. Is that it for questions for the ward councillor? So thank you very much, Councillor Tippett-Cooper, coming along today. And the last public speaker, we have two. Are you both going to speak? That's Ross Galtress and the agent, and Martin Johnston, the applicant. Both going to speak, yeah. Okay, I can't quite hear you because you're not speaking into a microphone. You are speaking.
I'll be speaking. I'll introduce the scheme.
Microphone's gone off. You are speaking. That's fine. That's all I wanted to know. And when you're ready, Is the
Could
microphone
you
not
just move
working?
over to the
Swap
public
over.
participation
Swap the
seat?
microphone with the.
Hello.
Yeah.
That one might have run out of battery. Yes, I'm Ross. I'll be introducing the scheme, and then
Okay.
both myself and Martin are here.
Right.
Committee.
Okay. So when you're ready, the clock will come up on the screen, and you have 3 minutes. So
Yeah.
when you're ready.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Ross Galtrus. I'm a Hyde resident and associate at OB Architecture. Our practice is based in Winchester, and I'm here to support the application, respond to public representations conveyed by Penny and John, and answer any questions from the committee. I'm accompanied by Martin Johnston, who is the applicant. Martin acquired the site after the original application was submitted in 2019. Martin runs a company called Earth Strategies, which specialises in sustainability in the built environment. He has been the driving force behind the recent changes to the proposal and the push to make this an exemplary low-carbon home. Martin also lives in Hyde. The proposals are for an exemplary low-carbon family home, which offers a significant improvement on the existing building and will contribute to the carbon reduction targets adopted by this council when it declared a climate emergency in 2019. Proposals are supported by Winchester City Council's Case Officer, Urban Design Officer, the Historic Environment Team, and the relevant statutory authorities, including the Environment Agency and Historic England. I want to stress that we understand the public interest in this scheme and have made significant changes to the design to address those. In response to the comments received on the original application, these include a 30% reduction in the building footprint, a 1.5 metre setback from the Nun Stream wall, a change in the materials to an entirely brick design which matches the existing context, increase in hedgerows and planting for biodiversity, and improved energy performance for reduced carbon emissions. In response to John and Penny's points, the flat roofs and the contemporary style do remain, but it's important to clarify that this is not the result of an architectural whim or a preference of style. It's simply an honest response to a unique and narrow triangular site and the richly varied context. John talked about the golden triangle of heritage. There are, in the immediate vicinity of this site, there are medieval buildings, a bunch of Victorian terraces, which are typical of Hyde, and also 20th century buildings. And it's important that this site is a modern building that sits amongst those other typologies and doesn't try to imitate those, but is honest to its time. We believe it's a design that's appropriate to its place and time, and appropriate materials are then used to anchor it into the local context. I'm able to, we've spoken to the Environment Agency, so I'm able to take questions on flood risk. But yeah, I just want to say thank you for your time. Martin, I will welcome any questions. And I hope the committee can support these proposals for an exemplary low-carbon home fit to address the climate emergency.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
And it could be that the committee wish to ask you questions of clarification. And Mr. Johnson, if you wish to speak, as you've registered, you can speak at this point, but only in answer to the questions. Members, any questions? Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Chair. I'll start with one, if I may. You're obviously aware of that document.
Councillor McLean, could you, I'm awfully
Well, I was
sorry.
just showing.
Yeah, but could you talk into the microphone, because it does block the sound.
You're aware of this document?
The high quality
yes.
SPD. Yes.
And it talks about roof lines.
It does, yes.
And it says roof lines should respond positively to surrounding development. And also roof lines, including ridge and east height, have a significant impact on the appearance of buildings and how they appear in context. Could you come back with an answer on that one, please?
Absolutely. As I said, the choice of the flat roof is primarily dictated by the width of the site. So it's a triangular site. It tapers from 11 metres to 2 metres at its narrowest point. To put a pitched roof building on that site is impractical because pitched roof buildings basically relate well to orthogonal plots. The buildings on that site at the moment is basically as big as you can create a building with a pitched roof. This is a unique detached island site in the centre of Hyde, and we have tried to create a building that is split. Its scale is massing into two that relates back to the terraced houses that surround it. But then putting a pitched roof on those would actually, if you were to go down the route, it would emphasise the kind of the modernity of it more so than it does with the flat roof. My honest belief, and it's a point of contention. It's been brought up a number of times, but it's not a practical site to deliver with a pitched roof design.
And Councillor McLean, we have Rachel White here, who's the lead of the historic environment. So obviously we will be spending time on the historic environment in a minute.
Thank you, Chair, but I just wanted to ask the question of the applicant, not Rachel.
Yeah, okay. Well, you've asked the question. Right, so that brings us, I think, to the end of the public speaking. So thank you very much, gentlemen, for coming along today. If you'd like to return to your seats.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Megan, anything you'd like to add? I've just got a question. I think it was Councillor Tippett-Cooper that talked about the number of objections, and these are on page 19 of our report, where it says the total objections are 156. And I was a little puzzled by that, because we have, for the first application, we had 111, and then 48 to the amended plans. So, I mean, it could be that some of the 111 thought that their representations would be carried over. But is it really feasible to add the 111 to the original plans to the 48 who then wrote in again?
Just a point of clarity, there were 111 objections to the first application. Then we reconsulted and there were further 48. They were from the same households as before. So in total, there were 111 from individual households.
No, I could see that, but I can't see, I don't know how anyone could be sure that there are 156.
Then there were 156 in total if you counted all the objections up individually, but individual households were counted 111.
You're missing the point here. Some of those objections were for the first application.
Yes.
And these are the 48 were for the amended plans. But I do accept that there could be some people out of the 111 want their objections to stay for the amended plans, but I don't think you can just add them together.
I think we accept that, Chair, and I think the case officer was saying was total letters 156, but you're right, of the 111, of the 156, 48 of those re-commented, but they were of the original. I accept, Chair, what you're saying.
Right, so it should be the 111 minus the 48 then. Anyway,
no, Chair,
it's an unknown quantity, but I don't think we can say it's 156.
No, Chair, it's 111 originally, and then of those 111, 48 people further commented on the revised plans. So we can't assume that the others withdrew their objection, even though they didn't re-comment. So I think, we have to take them all into account. Yes, the numbers useful for committee members because it shows you that weight of response. Yeah. But I think what's material is the summary and analysis of those objections, Chair.
Yes, I think we've had that from the ward councillor today. Okay, so let's go on to our report. Page 20, planning considerations. The first thing, first heading is principle of development. Questions there. And then we have impact on the character and appearance of the area. And this sort of links up with the historic environment. Councillor Pearson.
The impacts and character of the area.
Yes, yes.
Yep, okay. Yeah, Megan, I know you were the original case officer and you're having to pick up essentially the report, but you emphasise contemporary design. You said on balance, yet you're also implying it fits the character of the area. Now, flat roof in a historic area, Victorian age, or with pitched roofs. But other than being architectural, how does it fit the character of the area? Bearing in mind it is historic conservation area.
I think I'd let Rachel pick up a lot of these points as well. But if we take it back to policy, DM16 and DM15, and then to the conservation policy, DM23, please. No, it's not. Sorry, I am mistaken. 27. It states that a new building should respond sympathetically to the historic pattern and views, plot sizes, plot widths, open spaces, townscape, roofscape, trees, landscape and features. We believe, as a local planning authority, that that has been assessed looking at the context of the surrounding area. Yes, the majority of the buildings are Victorian style, and there is a grade 1 listed building and a grade 2 style listed building in the church, but there is also a variety of other buildings within the area as well. And I believe if I go back to this one at the bottom, if you see. The flat roof is comparative to surrounding heights and buildings within the surrounding context, and I believe it fits into that streetscape in the area. And I don't know if Rachel wants to pick up any more in relation to the context of the conservation area and the listed building and the scheduled monument.
Yes, I was just about to invite Rachel to come forward, and because I think probably we've got lots of questions that we want to ask the historic environment. Good morning, Rachel. Do you want to talk about the flat roof first of all?
Good morning, Chair. Thank you. In terms of the flat roof, I do hear what members are saying, and that is a discussion that we had internally very early on as to whether a flat roof in this location was appropriate. And I think the architect very clearly explained the reasoning behind the constraints of the site and why a pitched roof in this particular instance might not necessarily be the most appropriate way of redeveloping the site. In order to respond positively to a site's context, a building doesn't necessarily have to replicate the built form of everything around it. And as we've heard, there is a variety of built form, although pitched roofs are prevailing. One thing to remember with the pitched roof, particularly in relation to the existing building, it's a very small building. It's effectively a 1.5-storey building. The accommodation in the existing bungalow, it's effectively a dormer bungalow. The first floor accommodation is within the roof space. It's not a full 2-storey height. To achieve a full storey height on the second floor, your pitch is increasing and your height of your roof is increasing. So in some cases, and I think this is an example of that, what you can find is that in trying to accommodate a pitched roof, your building appears bigger and appears more dominant, whereas having a flat roof can actually make it appear more recessive, give it a more human scale. So in some contexts, that is sort of the bargain, if you like, the difference between the two approaches that can influence which way a design proposal might be developed.
Councillor Pearson.
I think you've got a little bit of cart before the horse there. You're modifying the shape of the roof in order to get a second floor in at the same dimensions as the first floor. That basically is what you're saying, isn't it? And you need, because of the restricted area on that site, you need, again, the pitch roofs have to be too steep, it have to be too tall, and effectively what the applicant wants doesn't actually fit on that site. Is that what you're saying?
What I was trying to explain was sort of in principles, general principles, why in some cases a flat roof might not be a bad thing and why a pitched roof might not necessarily be accommodating. I was talking in very general terms, not necessarily in relation to what the applicant is achieving on this site. It was more about why on this site a flat roof might be better than a pitched roof.
Sorry, Chairman, one word comes to mind, sophistry. I still think the cart's before the horse. Trying to manipulate, sorry, I'm getting into debate, which I shouldn't do. No, well, there is another question which relates to historic environments as well. I noticed in the report that the materials suggested by the architect used flint. Now, the city officers have changed that to red brick. Now, in a historic area, going back to Saxon time, surely flint would have been more appropriate, or is there some historic reason why it isn't?
Again, in principle, there wouldn't necessarily be an objection to the use of flint. The difficulty with flint is that for it to be successful, it has to be very well laid. Flint blocks tend not to work very successfully. They tend to be a pretty low visual quality. And in this area, it's the very high status grade 1 listed buildings and grade 2 listed buildings which are constructed of flint. The majority of the domestic building stock is red brick. So in terms of hierarchy of character within the area, Hyde Abbey Gateway and St Bartholomew's stand out because of their difference in materials. So to use flint in this context on a small constrained site where the majority of the surrounding domestic development is brick could, and this was the concern, could result in any building on the proposal site competing with those key historic buildings in terms of use of materials. But again, that depends how that is achieved, the extent of flint that is used. So in principle, there wouldn't necessarily be an objection to flint, but those were the reasons why there were concerns about the use of flint.
Thank you, Chair. That response, I entirely agree with it. The first response does worry me, frankly.
Yes, please be careful, Councillor Pearson, not to get into debate. We're just at questions. And yes, I've seen your hand, Councillor Westwood, but Councillor McLean first.
Thank you, Chair. That must have been in your discussions. When we come to 6.50, roof lines should respond positively to surrounding developments. Can you explain to me how this responds positively?
I think Megan's already picked up on the fact that the actual height of the flat roof is comparable to and relates to particularly the terrace on the opposite side on Saxon Road. So in that respect, we think it is compliant with the SPD.
Sorry, the actual written statement here, it says should respond positively. At the moment, I don't believe it does, and I'd like you to try and convince me that it does respond positively because it's a flat roof surrounded by pitches and 2 historic ones.
The reason that we consider it responds positively is because it has taken its key from and been informed by the scale of development in the immediate vicinity, the domestic scale of development in the immediate vicinity. So it's looked at in the applicant's submission. I hope members have seen there was a very detailed analysis of the site in relation to Saxon Road in particular, and that looked at things like the rhythm of the street scene, the proportions of the openings, the size and scale of the openings, and the roof height and the scale. So just because it's a flat roof doesn't necessarily mean it doesn't respond positively, because as I say, it's about your perception of height, it's a human scale, and it's about how the scale is appreciated when you're within the street scene, and to avoid it being overly dominant or visually intrusive. So because the height of the building as proposed has been informed by all that analysis of the context, we think it does respond positively for those reasons.
Councillor Westwood.
Thank you, Chair. Back to the flat roof. Are you aware of any other buildings in this conservation area that have flat roofs, or is this a precedent setting should be minded?
So Hyde obviously is a character area of the Winchester City Conservation Area, which I'm sure you're all aware is very large. And within the conservation area as a whole, there are a large number of flat roofs. Focusing in on that site, every application needs to be based and judged and assessed on its merits. And I don't think that accepting a flat roof in this particular context would necessarily mean that a flat roof in another context would be acceptable, because the constraints and the considerations that affect this site might not be relevant on another site. So the answer to your question is no, I don't think it would set an unwelcome precedent.
That wasn't quite my question. That would be if we were minded to approve this. My question was, is there an existing flat roofed building in this vicinity?
I'm sure there are. I can't point you to one, but in terms of the conservation area, there are a number of flat roof buildings within the Winchester City Conservation Area.
As a rider to that, would the flat roof be a material planning reason to refuse this application?
If the flat roof directly resulted in harm to the character and appearance of the conservation area or to the setting of the listed buildings, then yes, it would. But officers' view is that that's not the case here. I know it's not your sort of responsibility, but I wondered if you could show light on page 15, Historic England, said that they don't want to offer any comments because it doesn't pass their threshold for engagement. And I was a bit puzzled by that. Can you help us there? Yes, so there are certain times when local authorities need to consult Historic England in regards to development management proposals. In relation to development within conservation areas, Historic England only required to be consulted where there is the demolition of a building or an extension of a building and the area of land in respect of the application is more than 1,000 square metres. In some cases, even where the land is in excess of 1,000 square metres and it meets that threshold for consultation, Historic England do sometimes send their standard letter if they think the proposals are either not contentious or are fairly low key.
Thank you. And then the chimney has been sort of singled out by the City of Winchester Trust. Any comments on the chimney, which is part of the second application, isn't it?
Not per se, Chair. I think it was a comment by the design review panel that the chimney was a little timid, and my interpretation of that was that its proportions could have been a little bit more robust, which was something that I agreed with, but it was a small element of detail and it wasn't a significant issue.
Any further questions for Rachel on conservation area?
Well,
Councillor Pearson.
not so much conservation area, you've raised much of the chimney, which I was going to raise as well, but I didn't get a chance to. Is it a blind chimney? Is it just there as an architectural detail because other buildings have got chimneys? I.e., is it a chimney that is going to be in use, or is it blocked off as just a decoration? Because we've got an air quality issue here.
Hopefully Megan can answer that. Yes, so in this instance, I will just ask the agent, the chimney? Didn't quite hear. The functional chimney. Thank you very much. Thank you. Functional chimney. Councillor Cunningham.
Can I just have clarification on the chimney being a functional one? Is it going to be a wood burner or a coal-fired?
Don't think that's a planning concern? No. Not for us to investigate. Any further questions for Rachel, or anything, Rachel, that you wish to say on this application?
Only really, Chair, that the key considerations from the historic environment perspective, I think, are covered in the officer's report. The proposals, in our view, do preserve and enhance the character and appearance of the conservation area, which is the key test, and do not harm the setting of adjacent listed buildings.
Okay, thank you. Do stay there, because I have a feeling that there might be more questions for you. So we were debating on our main report. We've done principal development, and I think we finished impact on the character and appearance of the area.
Sharon, could I?
Yes.
One of the problems with this impact on the area is that the case officer makes a number of topics up that we normally deal with separately. I mean, for example, flooding is in here, and that's not to do with the impact of the area. I would like to ask questions about the flooding. There's also something at reference to green roofs here, which is environment, but that's not a separate section. So how are we going to deal with it?
Yes, we will ask the questions, of course, on flooding, and normally flooding is at the end. Yeah. I'll have to say, I do find this report, and no, it's not yours, Megan, rather involved. So yeah, let's just, we will ask on flooding. We'll ask it in a minute, okay? I just want to do the sort of historic environment conservation first. So any more questions along those lines? And then we have the South Downs National Park. We're told in the last paragraph that it won't affect any land in the national park. It is 0.3 kilometres, so it's fairly near. Then we've got the historic environment, which we have spent some time on. Are there any further questions? Quite a few pages on that. I've asked all my questions. Right, so then we get to the conclusion, and let's bring, well, we've got sustainable drainage, but let's bring the flooding in there. Councillor Pearson, you've got a question on that?
Yes, please, I do. Megan, you may be able to answer the first bit of this question. On one of your pictures you showed there, showed a picture of Nunn Stream with, there was a flood defence wall. Fence above it, is that an additional flood barrier, or is it simply a decorative fence?
I believe it's decorative fence. The site is in flood risk zone 1, so it's a very low risk of surface water flooding. The new scheme has been commented on by the Environment Agency and pulled back from that the boundary with the stream, and they are now satisfied that it's acceptable in terms of flood risk.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm a bit at odds with the Environment Agency as well, but I mean, we've got flood defences in that area which stop water going into the area a little to the, well, around the leisure centre, basically, that flood defence there, which means water that spreads on the floodplain can't spread in the floodplain, it stays in the stream. That stream passes this site. So you're getting, in times of flood, and I just agree 1 in 100 flood, we're talking about nowadays 1 in 80 flood. That is actually, the Met Office changed that classification, which we don't seem to have picked up on yet, which means more water is going to be in that stream after very heavy rains, which implies that that flood defence on this site should be higher. So that's why I'm asking about that fence on top of the existing wall. Is that to hold back water? Because you're going a bit farther into here where you talk about the floor, ground level is raised 300 millimetres. Now 300 millimetres, that amount. Now flooding normally in that area is at least knee deep. Now that's hardly, well, it's certainly not mine knee deep. It might be yours, I don't think it is either. So, I mean, you see why I'm talking about the flooding? I mean, I apologise, you're not the officer that wrote the report, and that makes it difficult. But can you develop on that? Can you explain these anomalies?
To be honest, I'm not an expert. As you said, we need to rely on the consultees and the expertise that the experts have given to us, and they've not objected on the proposed scheme that's in front of us. That's all I can say, I'm afraid.
Sorry, Councillor Pearson, microphone.
I've also got a question on environment as well, but when it comes up. I mean, this is part of the general environment. I want to pick up on the green planting, which is dealt with later in condition.
While we're on drainage, have you had the answer to your concerns?
Well, no, in fairness to Megan, she doesn't know the answer because she didn't write this report. She hasn't done the research. No. I can fully understand that. I'll apologise now, but I don't know, Julia, I don't know if you know the answer.
Chairman, I don't. It's a very technical question. You have to rely on our statutory and non-statutory consultees. In this case, Southern Water, the Environment Agency aren't raising objections, and indeed our own drainage engineer, very experienced. They've given us advice that says, in that respect, your officers, and we don't have any.
Okay, fair enough, Julia. So, I'm sorry to ask.
No, that's fine. Yeah. And I wanted to ask further. It's not a separate bit in the report, but on page 16 of our report, we've got the drainage engineer, and he says that an investigation for an infiltration SUDS should be carried out. Is that covered by conditions 12 and 13? Megan, yeah.
Yes, it is, yes. It's covered by condition 13.
Thank you. So Councillor Clear.
Thank you, Chair, but I think you've answered my question, because I was just going to bring to the attention condition 12 and 13 regarding the flooding. So I think we've probably covered that now, but thank you.
Councillor McLean, did you want to ask a question on the flood?
Yes, I did. Thank you. I was noticing the applicant was trying to catch the chair's attention and maybe would have some technical information. You've allowed him to speak once before that would maybe answer the question that Councillor Pearson's asking.
Yes,
and you have set a precedent.
Thank you for that, but I think Julie has answered that question. Thank you. Right, so you can see what I mean about being a complicated report, because we're going backwards and forwards and we don't normally have to do that. So we've done, I think, historic environment, and now we've done flooding concerns and drainage. And then there is a separate paragraph on neighbouring amenity. I think that's on page 28, but I thought we'd perhaps covered that, but there is no overlooking. Then we've got sustainable transport. Councillor Pearson.
I mean, this links with parking, which is again part of the amalgam, unfortunately. Now, we're told that the normal number of parking spaces for a building of this size would be 3. but this site has had the parking area reduced. You can't take 3 anymore. And in place of that, you said there's an electric charging point. Now, this is a family. I don't know what the size of the family is. Generally, a family home in this size would mean 3 cars. So where is the extra car going to park? Isn't a satisfactory answer. If I say so, people will be able to walk in. They'll actually do travel outside Winchester. Maybe just a rumour. So they use cars. So one of the problems of this area is restricted parking. Now we reduce the size of parking.
I believe it's gone down from 2 to 1 parking.
That's correct, yes. The proposal proposes 1 parking space. This is a replacement dwelling, so it benefits still from the permit parking in the area, so it would still have those permit parking spaces available. It is also, as you said, a very sustainable area, very close to the train station, very close to the city centre, and a lot of amenities, and they've got a space for 1 parking space off-road. But we believe it's acceptable.
I mean, I understand cars. Like electric cars take up the same amount of parking room as does a conventional car, but maybe they're different.
Don't believe there have been any highway objections.
No, there haven't. No.
Councillor McLean, did you want to come in there? No. No? Okay. So we are now looking at ecology and biodiversity and probably landscape, because that's normally a heading. Did you, Councillor Pearson, want to ask about that? Yeah.
I did say I want to ask questions about this. I mean, biodiversity requires now a 10% increase in biodiversity minimum of, and what we're saying here in this thing is the BAT survey said we need BAT boxes, fair enough, probably need SWIFT boxes as well. But, and you've said in the landscaping that there is more additional planting going in on this site, which will help. I'm homing in on the green roof. Green roofs are usually some form of algae or low form planting. It's not mentioned in the conditions. But solar panels are.
It is in the report.
You want clarification on the type of green roof or whether it's needed? I mean, because the conditions, so condition 2 is the plan condition, so it requires the developer to build that green roof in accordance with the plans.
What a green roof?
Yes.
Again, I would like to see more information about that, because it doesn't match with your solar panels you're going to put in. There is a section in there about solar panels or air heat pumps or whatever. You couldn't use ground heat because, of course, it'd go below the water table.
Is that question?
To summarise, the green roof is conditioned.
Yeah, there's a condition requiring the plans to be built, the building to be built in accordance with the plans,
so it does
which includes the green roof.
The condition does cover green roof.
Yes.
Which is the flat roof.
Which is the plan condition.
Okay,
number 2.
With your assurance.
I think we've got to the end of the headings that we've got there, but there might be something else that you feel you want to ask a question about. If not, then we'll move into debate.
As no one else wants to go first. Chairman, I really am unhappy about a number of issues related to this application. Starting with the flat roof, an area that does not have flat roofs. The argument in favour of the flat roof is to allow more space on the second floor. I fully understand that, because it would mean the pitched roof would go up higher and you'd have objection to the pitched roof being too high. And that's one of the reasons why we have flat roofs, to give you more space on the directly underneath. But it doesn't fit in this area. And a historic environment area, despite what Rachel says, really does depend upon everything being in context. This is, in your own words, or at least case officer's words, it's a contemporary design, but it's verged into too contemporary because it just, it's a bit, well, if I can quote King Charles, sorry, not King Charles, Prince Charles, it's like a carbuncle within this area. This is an area which is famed for particularly the Hyde Abbey area. It is actually within the bounds of where the Hyde Abbey was. That's why we have an archaeological survey on the building of this, which becomes particularly important. I'm not too sure about the flooding issue, especially when you link with a sustainable drainage. We're talking about the use of suds for sewage, such as for a building this size, we have box kind of about this high, about so much, is a vacuum pump to deal with it. I mean, I've seen that sort of thing down at the Hamble River Harbour, used for yachts coming into sewage instead of tipping it into the river. Now, Southern Water is a little uncertain about this. There's uncertainty for suds in here, and yet levelling up and regeneration bill, it is part of that. Part of the Environment Act, we're not taking that on board. So this and the reduction in parking worries me because, oh, you're close enough to town centre, you can walk in. Indeed you can. People actually do go outside the city. I don't know the residents are going to be working up in London, walk to the station and then have to train. Yeah, fair enough. But it worries me when you reduce an available parking area, our room for a building which by passing, because of that need for the flat roof, too big for this site. I'd be interested to hear what the other members serve us. Again for that.
Thank you. Any further contributions to debate? Councillor Westwood.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I too share Councillor Pearson's concerns over this site, and listening to everybody, team, I look at this development and my view is that it's overdevelopment on what is a relatively small site. I have visited the site, so I do physically understand how big it is, and because of that desire to get that particular size of building and that amount of accommodation onto the site, it resulted in this design with the flat roof for all the reasons that people have spoken about in terms of giving the space. And then you have to consider the impact on the area of effectively, in my view, overdevelopment on relative to the house that's sitting there today and the surrounding area. So I have difficulties in supporting this going forward, but again, I would like to listen to views from my colleagues here.
Thank you. I'm going to come in here. I normally wait till the end, but I feel that we have sort of gone down sort of blind alleyways with this. Yes, it's a difficult site, and yes, it's a contemporary design, but sometimes that's the solution rather than imitating what's around. And the flat roof has had a lot of prominence, and we've heard from our historic environment lead that they don't see a problem with it. I mean, when you look at the views of the flat roof, yes, okay, there might not be other flat roofs in the area, but it is serving a purpose. It's going to be a green roof. And what would you want? Would you want a sort of gable, which would be even more prominent? So at least the flat roof allows it to merge in through the area. we've not heard from officers any material reasons why we should refuse this. I think we must bear that in mind. Yes, we might not like everything, but that is a matter of personal choice. This is a second application. The first application did attract a lot of objections, and the applicant and the agent have worked very hard to accommodate those objections. And I'm not too sure, Councillor Pearson, where you get the bit about Southern Water not being keen on the application. They've just required conditions, which I checked, and they are being put on. So it's, as Rachel said, it's a small development. It's a small replacement dwelling. So I can't see a material planning reason to object to this application. Councillor Clear, did you want to speak?
Thank you, Chair. We've had several questions and discussions, and I personally am quite happy with the comments and contributions to our questions from the officers today. I think the revised plans have, with significant changes, resolved lots of the, satisfactorily to my mind, lots of the previous comments and concerns, and I personally see now no material reasons to refuse this application, and I think it's a vast improvement to current property, so I shall be voting for with the officers. Thank you.
Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Chair. I don't think we have gone down many blind alleys, which I think you're trying to suggest we have. I think we've been asking very pertinent questions. The problem I have with this is our own document. And when you look, it talks about roof lines. It says, as I suggested earlier, roof lines should respond positively to surrounding development. I do not believe it does. Because they're pitched roofs, this isn't. We've heard the reasons for it not being pitched, but I don't believe that they outweigh it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think this has been a really rich discussion, actually.
Could you talk into the microphone? So sorry.
Yeah.
Makes all the difference.
Sort of rock star licking the mic style. I think it's been a really rich discussion this morning. We've raised a lot of issues. It is a complex application with a long history. I'm very familiar with the site. I walk past it regularly, and I wait a couple of days ago to take a detailed look, to refresh myself. Just quickly, I would say the point about parking that Councillor Pearson raised, I think with the climate emergency and the policies that we have now regarding parking, provision here should be quite adequate. I myself live in a house in the conservation area. We have one visitor's parking only permit and nothing on site, and we walk around the town and don't use the car. So I don't think that's a problem. I think it's obviously a very sensitive site, and a very sensitive site requires a sensitive, clever solution. And I think that's what we've got. I recognise there's been a long period of amendment and design and discussion, and I think the plans that are now proposed would in fact be a high quality addition to the community and the local townscape. The issue of how it fits in to the built environment, I think we've heard a lot. We've heard about materials, we've heard about the use of two separate linked blocks, we've heard about the vertical windows, all relating to having a conversation with, the architect might say, the Victorian and Edwardian terraces. Those terraces, when they were built, would have been subject to all the objections that have been made to this house
had such conversations been had at the time? Materials, volume and so on. So I will be supporting this application. However, I do recognise that it's a complete and integrated development of a tiny and sensitive site. And as is suggested in the officer's report, but I can't actually see amongst the conditions, I do think that removing permitted development rights would be a problem. Thank you, Chair.
We're just checking that. Yeah. Yeah, we have removed it. Condition 7. Thank you. And Councillor Laming.
Thank you. This application is quite contentious. I thought it was, sorry. I think this is quite contentious. I think that a lot of good things on...
Sorry, Brian.
Okay. I think there's a lot of good things in this application on the way it's been treated, but the problem I have is that we're trying to squeeze an awful lot into a very small space, and that's resulted in having a flat roof, which I think is out of context within the locality, being so close to the scheduled monuments and the actual area itself, because I don't believe there is another flat roof in that area. And I think we're just trying to get in too much into that building, and it's a case of overdevelopment of that site. And I don't think I can support this application.
Thank you. So unless anyone else wants to speak, I think we've got to the point of the application where we vote. Checking there are no extra conditions on the update sheet, so the conditions in the report stand. So this application has been recommended for approval. All those in favour, please show.
4, Chair.
And those against?
5, Chair.
So that application is refused, and we have to have material planning reasons to refuse this application. Those people who voted
Start off with
to
massing.
refuse it, please speak.
Start off with massing. It's too large a development for that site,
Yeah, okay.
which has led to the flat roof, which is out of character, which is your second one, which is but not sure whether lack of parking is material, but certainly, I'm not sure whether lack of parking is material, but that is another issue in my mind.
I think so, because Mrs. Pinnock is shaking her head.
Chairman, I wouldn't want to defend the reason on lack of parking in sustainable location. Very difficult, Chair.
Okay, so I'd add the chimney. Talking about reducing air pollution, we're putting a chimney in. I'm sorry. If that was just an architectural feature, i.e. a blind chimney, I would have no objection. It isn't, and I do object. Normally put chimneys into buildings these days.
Again, Chairman, I don't think that's really a reason we could refuse this application on. Obviously, we don't have a policy on that, and it would be a matter for building control. Both in our high quality places, SPD, and your policies, we do encourage chimneys in appropriate locations, Chair. Whether a dummy chimney or not isn't necessarily a material matter, I'm afraid.
Anything else? Councillor McLean?
Thank you, Chair. I just look at this document, which talking about roof lines should respond positively. It is our document. Is it therefore considered to be part of our, if you like, planning policy? Therefore, if it is, I would like to cite that as an objection.
Just help us articulate what the harm is.
Well, it's surrounded by pitched roofs, as we've been discussing all morning. and then we've got a flat roof in the middle of it that I don't believe conforms to 6.50, which is a roof line should respond positively to, which I don't believe it does.
So you believe it's out of character?
Yes,
and doesn't
very much so.
respond to- That's
Totally.
that's what I'm just looking for, Chair. So
Okay.
you can help articulate a reason here. Got any others, Chair, before I try and conclude?
Are there any further reasons for refusing this application? If not, I'll ask Mrs. Pinnock just to summarise, and then we'll take a vote as to whether we accept those conditions for.
Thank you, Chair. Just had been trying to sort of draft a rough draft of a potential reason for refusal. I suggest, based on what I've heard, that you might say something like the proposal results in overdevelopment of the site and does not respond positively to the character and appearance and variety of the historic settlement pattern of this part of the Winchester Conservation Area by reason of its design, size and massing and roof form, and is therefore contrary to policies DM27, DM16 and 17, and policy HQB8 of your high quality places supplementary planning document.
Thank you.
Chair.
Thank you. So any disagreements over the reasons that Mrs. Pinnock has just read out? If not, then could we please vote on those reasons for refusal? All those in favour? I didn't count seven. I didn't vote.
Didn't get a vote from Councillor Clear. That was 7.
Could we just do the vote again? Sorry.
Yes, that 6.
Six. And those against? And abstentions?
1.
Okay, so 6-1.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Megan, especially for stepping into the breach. And we're going to now take a short break until 11:05. Thank you. So we move now on to agenda item 7. Good morning, those who've just joined us. I am Councillor Evans. I'm chair of the committee, and sitting around the room are the councillors who make decisions on the application. And then next to me we have Julie Pinnock, who's the service lead for the built environment, Fiona Sullivan, who's the legal advisor, case officer, who in this instance is Marge Ballinger, and then we have Claire Buchanan, who's the clerk to the committee and will operate the timing for the public speakers. Not expecting a fire alarm practice, so if you hear it, it's the real deal. So please follow the instructions of people who will come in and escort us out of the building, and the assembly point is in Abbey Garden. So we move on then to case number 22/00502/FUL, which is the Cricketers Inn in Curdridge Lane, Curdridge, Southampton. This is a retrospective application for a new timber garden building constructed within the front garden of the pub for ancillary use to the existing pub. The structure will include a pizza oven and seating for customers, and occasional use for special events, such as wakes, christenings and weddings. We've already said the case officer is Marge Ballinger. So when you're ready, Marge, we're ready to hear.
Thank you, Chair. This slide demonstrates, sorry, let me adjust this, the location of the site of the pub, with the original pub building in the back of the red-edged area. This version of Google Maps demonstrates the former parking arrangement from 2020. The retrospective building is positioned within the existing pub garden here, and some of the parking has been altered prior to this application submission. This map demonstrates the wider areas dwellings surround the proposal site, but more closely along its west, north, and east sides. The curve along Curdridge Lane is at the junction of Lockham's Road here, and Whole Lane is the public right-of-way located here. This is the proposed site plan with retained seating along its front entrance and within the grassed garden area. There's also a children's play area, and this tree has been retained. And then the retrospective garden building is located within the pub garden. The building is set back away from the roadside within the existing garden with the seating. Parking for up to 32 cars are demonstrated within both the existing and proposed site plans. There have been no alterations proposed from its original access off of Curdridge Lane. This is the floor and the roof plan. The building is 14.4 meters by 6.7 meters approximately, with an enclosed kitchen area for pizza oven within this side, and for seating up to 6 tables of 6 people each. The side elevation of the seating is left open with 3 roof lights above, and a slight overhang along the side of the building is supported by oak posts, and that's demonstrated here. Although enclosed on 3 sides, there are 2 doors and a window. A door here to the kitchen, or window here, a door, and then another door to the side. The flue has been built along the west roof pitch, a change from what was drawn within the roof plan shown. I wanted to highlight that instead of here, the new location of the flue is in the pitch here. These are the elevation drawings. The building's external materials are natural timber cladding to be stained a dark brown or black color, and this would match the window and door frames. The roof is slate, and there is a red ridge tile above. Again, the flue for the pizza oven has been installed, repositioned with the amended drawings shown within this proposal, so along the west roof slope here. These are photos taken from March of this year. Photo 1 demonstrates the building's position within the garden seating from across Curtis Lane. Photo 2 is a view from the current car park back toward the pub's main building on the right and the retrospective outbuilding on the left. And these are more photos from March of this year. This demonstrates the view. Photo 3 demonstrates the view from the side of the pub back toward the pub building itself. The adjacent area shown here with concrete has since been infilled and grassed, not left with this much of a drop. Photos 4 and 5 are views of inside the building. The sides and roof of the building is to be insulated and finished with the roof's internal beams above exposed. And these are more photos taken recently in May. Photo 6 is a view of the site's and from the site's entrance and drive back toward the building. Photo 7 is a view directly from the parking area. And photo 8 is a view from across the lane, Curtis Lane. The dark stained doors and windows have been inserted, as well as tables for seating up to 36 people inside. And this slide provides details to compare the relationship to the proposed retrospective outbuilding to the neighbor along its west side, Barron's Court. Barron's Court has had extensions built that were not demonstrated within the proposed site plan submitted within this application. The dwelling has been extended via the plan shown along on the left here, the dotted area. And it's had its original garage removed and replaced with a kitchen and study room. And both were built in early 2021. The hard standing for the proposed outbuilding had started in November of 2021. The outbuilding is approximately 5 meters away from Barron's Court's boundary near the kitchen and study area. There is a fence to the boundary along this lane and a low hedge within the proposal site shown on, and I'll show that on the next slide. The installation of the flue to the pizza oven is within the west roof pitch, just to reiterate. These were photos taken from Barron's Court. Photo 9 is a view from the shared access lane for the two dwellings behind the pub, demonstrating the relationship of the building compared to Barron's Court's kitchen extension on the left. Again, this gap is measured to be about 5 meters approximately from the building, from the proposal building to the fence. Photo 10 is a view from the rear seating area of Barron's Court with views back toward the retrospective outbuilding behind the trees. You can see the roof here. Photo 11 is another view from Barron's Court, but from the front elevation back toward the garden building. And please note that this photo was taken before the flue was installed. I think that was installed or repositioned a few weeks ago. But it is within this roof pitch here. And these are other photos surrounding the site. Photo 12 is a view from the lane north of the outbuilding looking back toward Curtis Lane. Photo 13 is a view from the dwelling Myrtle College, which is just north of the site, with side views back toward the original pub building. So there are no views of the outbuilding from this view.
from Myrtle Cottage north. And photo 14 is a view of the dwelling Underwood, which sits here on the other side of the parking area, away from the retrospective outbuilding. And these are the next few slides are to compare what was previous and compared to what has been built. Photo 15 is a view from Google Maps in March of 2021 from the site's entrance. This photo demonstrates the former portable pizza oven service, and it looks like to be located in this horse box here. And it also has Barron's Court prior to its extensions displayed in the background here with its current garage. And to compare this to today, photo 16 is a similar view from March 2022 that shows the extended dwelling in the background and the position of the building. But please note, Google uses a wide angle lens and raises their cameras. So obviously I couldn't capture an exact view. And these are more photos to compare to the before and after. Again, March 2021 approximately on the left, and a similar view from May of 2022 this year. And to conclude, it is considered that the proposed garden building with seating and pizza oven facility does not have a detrimental impact on the character and appearance of the area, and is also not considered to have an adverse impact on residential amenities of the occupants adjacent compared to the previous relationship of a garden seating and pizza oven facility, and is therefore in accordance with the policies of the development plan. But before I finish, is this a good time to discuss the update sheet and some of the points raised? In the update sheet, the first point, I would like to suggest an amendment to the condition with the flue being built in a different location. So those elevation drawings are to be switched out from revision D to a revision E. That was proposed. Also, the second point, I would like to suggest amendment to the suggested condition 3. As with the pub, there's an option for up to 12 times a year to hold larger events that exceed the parameters of what is permitted within the premises license. So this is just to make it more clear for condition 3 to state and add, quote, unless this is in accordance with any temporary events license granted, just to clarify. And the third point was the parish had submitted additional comments, and they suggested that we amend or control via condition the noise parameters stated in the acoustic report. However, the noise assessment considered the building to potentially reduce any patron noise of the pub garden by enclosing it with its 3 walls, and its pizza oven equipment noise is considered acceptable. And there were no other objections raised from the environmental protection officer to this application's details. So noise assessments are ongoing as per their premises license, and therefore there's no justification to include a condition to control this within the application. The parish also suggested a parking management plan condition. The existing parking was not altered within this proposal, and no further objections raised from Hampshire Highways within the details of this application. Therefore, a condition for parking management plan is not justified. But retention of the existing parking to 32 spaces was considered justified, and there's been some reduction of parking through the years, but before the application has been submitted and the building erected. Finally, the fourth point was a supplement from Mr. Rob Sullen on behalf of a neighbor. And the objections referred to the building's relationship to the character of the area, and as well as the condition 8 for parking did not address the overspill upon the public highway or the use of the pub for takeaway services. And finally, the objection mentioned that there were no controls for the number of events held within this planning application. So in regards to character, there is a landscape condition that will help soften the appearance of the building within the setting and has been assessed as acceptable within this officer's report. For parking, this proposal is to consider any harmful impacts of the building's use and retention when comparing it to the previous garden seating and cooking facility that's been demonstrated. While there will also comparing this to the previous parking arrangements of 32 spaces. So the applicant has admitted to utilizing a takeaway service during the pandemic lockdown, but has no intention of continuing this use as part of the business currently. The application has assessed the impacts of the proposed building based on the current parking availability and is considered appropriate due to the feedback and assessment from Hampshire Highways. And to address any potential controls on the number of events held within the proposed outbuilding. There are no previous controls on the use of the pub or its garden for events such as birthdays, christenings, etc., that fall within what is allowed within the current premises license. The proposal is considered to replace existing seating and existing cooking facility that was used on the site. Therefore, there's no justification to include controls within the application that would normally be allowed within their premises license. And all the additional comments received recently do not alter my recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that very full introduction. And I've got a polite request for people who are wishing to object to an application. We will see on the update sheet that we received a letter from Rob Sellon of Paris Smith on behalf of a resident, and it arrived yesterday in out of working hours. So the polite request is that please could objections be received by the officers not after the public speaking closes, so before public speaking closes. Otherwise, it's just extra work for the officers. We managed to get these on the update sheets. So we move to the public speaking. Only have the supporters, and that's Andrew Burgess and Stuart Downey. If you'd like to come forward, gentlemen. Morning. Are you both speaking? So you're going to have to share the 3 minutes. The clock will come up on the screen and it's up to you. We won't indicate to you because you can split the 3 minutes however you want. So when you're ready, you need to press the, yeah.
Okay, good morning. I'm Andrew Burgess, the planning consultant. Garden building will allow the pub to provide better outdoor seating throughout the year, enable funeral wakes, christenings to take place in a separate area, create a job for a full-time member of staff, support the viability of the business and the retention and prosperity of the pub. We'll also secure the future of a valuable community facility, which is used by Curdridge Church for services. We'll also reduce existing noise levels from the beer garden on the neighbouring dwelling, Barron's Court. The planning application has been thoroughly assessed and the issues addressed, the points raised by the planning officer have been thoroughly addressed. There is no highway objection, no objection from environmental health in respect of noise or odours. The very late representation by Paris Smith, in my view, is not an objection, it's just a representation. The case officer has responded on this. The Parish Council now raised no objection. This could possibly be a delegated decision in view of these recent events. In any event, There are no material planning reasons not to grant planning permission, subject to suitably worded conditions. Stuart Downey will now explain more as the landlord, and we would be pleased to answer any questions.
Along with 3 other local people who live in Kirdridge, we bought the pub in January 2020 as we went into the lockdown. We have carried out extensive refurbishment since we opened the pub in July 2020. We have made a total investment of 530,000 so far, including a full kitchen refit and a garden barn to make this pub fit for purpose and trade as it should. This has been recognised with multiple awards recently, including the finalists at National Pub and Bar Awards next week. I do acknowledge that we should not have carried on with the building works, but other local pubs have, and we were initially confused under the coronavirus regulations and structures in pub gardens were seen as permitted development. We also had contacts with suppliers that we were committed to, and I appreciate it does not create a good impression, and I apologise for our actions. Myself and the investors, we all live in Kirdridge, and we do manage the pub responsibly. The Cricketers has become a popular family venue since reopening. We even held local church services on Sunday mornings and have had the backing from our local vicar of the parish. We took over the pub in 2020. The Cricketers then employed 2 staff. We now have 28 staff on the payroll, including 6 chefs on the payroll. Overall, I think the Cricketers is a family-friendly public house. We do not have a young following, so most nights the lights are off by 10:30. I would really like for everyone to approve this application and allow the pub to enhance its facilities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good timing. It could be that the members of the committee have clarification questions for you. Councillor Edwards.
Thank you very much. When we were listening to the case officer, some discussion of the position of the flue. Ask you, is your understanding now that the flue inside of the roof closest to the lane rather than the garden, and would it be possible for you to change that position?
I think it would be quite difficult now because the flue, the pizza oven is 420 kilos. But what we have done, we've got it on a stand so it is movable in the future. But we have also, how the flue comes out the top now, we've just bought an extendable flue so it's even higher and it pops out over 1 metre high. So with any smoke coming out from the wood fire, we taken up higher than any of the next door neighbours' buildings.
Can I just add to that? The environmental health officer has seen the latest drawing and there's no objection to the flue in that position.
Thank you, Councillor Payne.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, I know the pub. My only sort of real comment, I don't know if it's a planning comment, probably not, but the odours coming out of your flue and the smoke, is there any form of air purification built in to your oven or to the flue to reduce the impact on the neighbours who are going to be, on occasion, going to get their houses, say, filled with odours?
The actual pizza oven is all fueled by wood, so it would be no different to having a log burner in a house.
I accept that, yeah. But at the moment there isn't a log burner in the house next door. You're building one, so my point is it not neighbourly? Possibly just to.
Yeah, we did originally. We had the horse box before we had the new building. So there was a flue that was installed there that had exactly the same smoke coming out of the top. But the flue on the top of ours has a fan on the top.
Some
there is no filter.
Right, thank you. That's what I wanted to know.
Yeah.
think they heard that. I was just asking the public speakers to objections from members of condition restricting takeaway service, or perhaps I should just ask the legal question about takeaways.
Chair, takeaway service operated by an existing pub or restaurant would not normally require planning permission. Those of you who were present at the training the other evening, you would have been told that it's not a material change of use and that it's an ancillary use, so it's basically part. Thank you, Chair.
And we were also told by the gentleman delivering the training that it's perfectly legal to have a retrospective planning application, as long as an application comes in eventually. And that with retrospective planning applications, see what the outcome's probably going to be. So quite an interesting. So we'll move on then to the report. Starts on page 63 with the principle of development. So impact on the character and appearance area. Historic environment. Neighbouring amenities. Sustainable transport. Ecology and biodiversity. I have written in the margin swifts, but I'm probably not going to insist on those because they're bat box and house sparrow terraces, so probably limit to get on your building. Questions? Sustainable drainage and the rest of the report. So debate. Councillor Pearson?
Yes, I saw it, but you know my opinion in retrospective planning applications. But I saw this site for the first time, I think, during the course of last week when I was going down to Sash for a meeting, and a bit surprised. In appearance, it looks like many that are in the area. It looks like a carport, basically. That's what it looks like from the road, anyway. It's incomplete, yes. Open sections. Cars in there. I looked at the car park thinking, oh, has it been reduced? No, it hasn't. Same number of cars there. I must admit, I've lived in this area for 6 years. I was not aware, and I've used this from time to time. Not recently, though. Hope you're still a Marsden's pub. But that's a by the way, nothing to do with planning now. I've never known a traffic problem there. It's on a bus route, yes. Quite honestly, I asked the comment 1.5 miles to the train station. Well, somehow I can't see somebody's been celebrating cricketers, and it's a very nice pub, open for celebrations. Going to walk 1.5 miles with no footpaths down to this station. But it was an interesting comment. I did check in the distance. You're pretty well right. It was a surprise that it's there, but it fits. It doesn't look. The photographs, unfortunately, sort of magnifies, and certainly the distance from the road makes it look closer than it actually is. Smells. It's always an issue when you have a new issue, but I mean, it's not unknown for the pub to have barbecues outside there as well. They don't do it regularly. A lot of the comments in here are related to the licensing rather than the actual, I suspect, planning. Although if it was a garden building, I think it's a bit big for a garden building. Wouldn't be many eyebrows raised. The fact that it's going to be a pizza unit is slightly different situation. And a number of the comments that I don't have any issue with it. And Marge's report well written and balanced and pretty fair as well. This is an area of large plots, and closest to the neighbours is a bit of a surprise because plots are usually quite large. Now it's pretty central. The disseminated settlement, not an issue, but it's not on a settlement boundary. There's no settlement boundary. It's disseminated all over the place. But to me, it's a useful expansion of the. So yes,
I do have no problems with this application. It is, as Councillor Pearson has said, a very large plot, and it's a successful pub. I haven't, but word is in the Wickham where I live is that it's the place to go to eat, and I think the current management have done a very good job and run a successful enterprise. It is one of our policies to encourage rural businesses. Very impressed with the way that they've increased local employment. It's used by the community, and there's no change. I know one of the worries is about the car parking change in the car park. All the problems of noise or smell or would be controlled by environmental separately. Yes. Of the application every 6 months. Any further comments? This application has been recommended for approval. There are a few extra conditions Marge pointed out. There's a condition about the flue because it's now in a different location. Condition about the sound, amendment to C3 condition. Condition 8 been added to ensure the existing 32 spaces maintained. So this has, with those additions, this recommendation. Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Chair. C3. So as the condition, what is being suggested is every time they wish to have outside music, they'll be applying for a temporary events notice. Is that my understanding of it?
They do have a temporary event license as well. So
Well, they have to apply for those, don't they? They have to apply for those.
Wouldn't apply.
Chairman, what the original condition suggested was that there should be no sound amplifying at all. What the amended condition seeks to recognise is that there may well be some events through the year that will be permitted by the temporary events licence. Therefore, it just allows for that, for those few events, and they will be regulated by the team that issue those event licences.
So to return to what I was saying, this application has been recommended for approval. All those in favour, please show.
9 unanimous, Chair. Thank you.
So that application has been approved. Very much. We move on now to the application. Marge, you're the case officer again. This is agenda item. Just wait a few seconds. Morning, gentlemen. Morning, gentlemen. Just so that you know who's here, I'm Councillor Evans. I'm the chair of the committee. Seated on both sides are the councillors determining the application. Left, Julie Pinnock, who's the service lead for the built environment, who's our legal advisor, and sitting in the corner is Claire Buchanan, who's the clerk for this application. Not expecting a fire alarm, so if you hear the alarm bell go, please treat it as real and make a quiet but swift exit as directed by the people who will come in and sort us out. The assembly point is in Abbey Garden. Please make sure that your phones are turned off or on. And we're ready to go, are we? Yeah. So this is case number 22-023, which is 3 Godwin Close, demolition of rear storage structures, erection of new integrated front porch, single-story rear extension, raised patio and first floor side extension over the existing garage. These are amended plans and amended. Case officer is Mark. When you're ready, Marge, we're ready to hear the presentation.
Thank you, Chair. This is a Google map of the site, and just wanted to point out some details of the area. This is Godwin Close is off of Stockbridge Road along the northeast side of the city, and the site is considered residential and within the settlement boundary. And here's the site defined by the red edge. The dwellings along the road have small front gardens and longer rear gardens. There are no buildings forward of the houses, and there is a buffer of trees and planting between Godwin Close and Stockbridge Road. There are no protected trees within the site for consideration. A right-of-way path is approximately 40 meters away, located here. And the land slopes gently down from the rear of the dwellings toward the rear boundaries, away from the dwellings. These are the existing site and floor plans. The dwelling consists of a double garage with a storage area behind along its ground floor. The front garden has been converted for gravel for parking. The side access to the rear of the property is along its east boundary here. And the dwelling has 3 bedrooms at first floor level with a family bathroom and a separate WC. And these are the existing elevations. There is a shallow open front porch that is proposed to be enclosed as the garage and porch sits slightly forward of the existing dwelling. And there are 2 side-facing windows along its west side, one to the landing and one to an existing WC. And these are the proposed floor plans. The proposal is to convert part of the garage and enclose the front porch, and this will create a guest bedroom to ground floor level. The rear will be extended from ground floor to create an open planned kitchen dining area. And there is a rear terrace proposed to wrap and extend out from the dining area with planting boxes indicated within its retaining walls here. At first floor is a side extension with a shallow front and rear projection. And the side extension is stepped back slightly from the existing ground floor. The first floor will be altered to create 4 bedrooms at this level. Parking will be retained for a minimum of up to 3 vehicles, and this meets the requirements of the parking standards. These are the proposed and front and rear elevations. The drawings have been amended from the original version to reduce the building works along the west side elevation by setting it back from the existing side wall of the garage and creating a hipped roof. The first floor master bedroom will have a Juliet balcony with side lights located here. The materials of the proposal are updated from its red brick to white painted brick to ground floor levels and narrow vertical cladding to first floor level with a slate roof. This is considered a modern interpretation of the dwelling, but retains its traditional design. The size and scale of the proposal exceeds what would be allowed within permitted development, as well as the change of materials. These are the proposed side elevations. The northwest or west elevation has 2 high-level windows proposed above head height, shown here, as this will be near the boundary. The outdoor terrace will follow the internal floor levels of the proposal, and this will create a raised platform of approximately 85 centimeters along this level due to the land level changes. The northeast elevation has glazing to ground floor, but this is set back away from the boundary. And no first floor windows are proposed. And the materials will be similar to the front and back elevations with painted white brick to ground floor levels and vertical timber cladding to upper levels and a slate roof. The windows and doors will be changed to dark gray frames. And these are photos of the dwelling as existing. Photo 1 is the front elevation with its gravel drive and hedge to the boundary. Photo 2 is the rear elevation. You can see how the land slopes away from the dwellings. Photos 3 and 4 are views toward the adjacent dwellings on either side. And the tree in the boundary of photo 4 is expected to be retained within one of the planting beds of the proposal. These are still more photos from the existing site. Photo 5 demonstrates the existing gap to the southeast boundary. And this is for access to and from the front and rear gardens, and this is to be retained. Photo 6 is the existing storage structure along the rear of the existing garage, and this will be demolished to replace with the extension. And this photo also shows the existing gap between the dwelling and the neighbor's dwelling. Photo 7 shows the remainder of the rear garden that includes a summer house, and at the rear boundary is a Scouts building, but at a distance from the proposal. These are photos to compare the relationship to the adjacent neighbor northwest, number 2. So photo 8 is an aerial map showing the existing relationship with the flat roof garage here as it sits next to number 2. Number 2 is built slightly forward of the primary elevation of number 3, but it's obviously has its design of the buildings different with a front-facing gable. Photo 9 shows another view of the existing gap, and this is measured to be approximately 3 meters from the side of the garage to the side of the wall, number 2. And this drawing below, just note that the original drawings were amended to reduce the building works and roof design to be below a 45-degree angle from number 2 side windows at ground floor. And this measurement, a 45-degree angle, is sometimes used as a rule of thumb in comparing relationships between structures and natural light. The side garage and eaves height will remain at 3 meters in height. Upper eaves height be followed along, and this will be 5 meters. And the roof will slope away from the side boundary to up to its highest point ridge at 9.6 meters. Has confused. And these are more photos taken from the property at number 2, the neighbor. Number 10 demonstrates the 3-meter gap along the side-facing wall of number 2 to the existing garage wall. And this photo also shows some of the planting along the boundary to the rear. Photo 11 demonstrates the existing view, but at a distance out from the bedroom / study of the existing, out toward the existing garage wall. This is the only external window to this room. Photos 12 and 13 show a partial view out toward the proposal site, but shown at 2 separate angles. They were never meant to be pushed together. It's just different views. The first floor shown here along the side wall of the proposal site is approximately 5.6 meters away. This is a reference point. And these are more details and photos to compare the relationship of the proposal's Juliet balcony to the neighbor to number 2. Photo 14 was taken from the neighbor's rear elevation that shows the existing sidewall to the proposal site. And this is expected to extend closer to number 2 by approximately 5 meters. The tree in number 2's rear garden along the boundary will provide screening of the side extension, and this also includes screening to the Juliet balcony. Also, the balcony is proposed to be positioned closer to the existing dwelling's building line compared to number 2's ground floor extension. And this will also be considered to prevent, this is also considered the positioning that prevents direct views from the Juliet balcony to the more primary outdoor amenity space to the rear elevation of number 2. In other words, this is where the Juliet balcony is to be, and the views of the would be at an angle to be out toward the rear elevation of number 2 after its extension. I think I said that clearly, but you can ask me for clarification if that doesn't make sense. Basically, the direct views from the balcony is expected to be out and above its own extension and not out to the side toward the neighbor's private amenity areas. Plus, the tree is quite high and significant, so this will provide much screening. These are details to describe the relationship of the raised terrace toward the neighbors. Photo 15 shows the sloped land at the boundary where the terrace is to be built level from ground floor level, from ground floor of the proposed rear extension. Fence panels of up to 1.8 meters above the raised terrace will be installed, and this has been included as a condition. The land is more level when comparing the terrace to the other neighbor on the other side, east. So it was not necessary to condition both sides of the raised terrace because the land is level and the fence panels already provide screening. And these are photos of various houses within Godwin Close. As you can see, there are various materials used and alterations with its design and the relationship of other dwellings of Godwin Close, and this includes building at first floor level along side boundaries. Photo 17 pictures a more modern use of materials and design to its existing dwelling with the installation of a white cladded facade to the front and timber cladding to other elements of the dwelling. To conclude, is it considered that the proposal with its amended drawings does not have detrimental impact on the character and appearance of the area and not considered to have an adverse impact on residential amenities of occupants of adjacent dwellings, and is therefore in accordance with the policies of the development plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we now move on to the public speaking, and we start with the objector, Peter Arnold. Morning, Mr. Arnold. Would like to come. In front of you, if you could have the microphone as close as possible to you. If you find it feeding back, then just move it away. At the bottom, there is a little button to press when you start speaking. You have 3 minutes, and when you start speaking, the clock will come up on the screen in front of you. And I'm afraid I'll have to stop you at the end of 3 minutes. When you're ready.
Thank you. I wish to reiterate and reinforce my objection on the basis that the proposed extension will be overbearing and will overshadow windows in my house. I've submitted a number of photos showing before and after to demonstrate this. I hope you've been able to view them. The acute angle in the side garden means that I couldn't show all of the windows, so I've included inside views to show the affected windows. Photos demonstrate the overbearing nature of the wall proposed to be built close to the boundary, as this hasn't been visually depicted in any other documentation presented. I wasn't able to represent the shadow that would be cast, but morning sun will be completely blocked from these southeast facing windows. Examples elsewhere in the street for this sort of side extension are typically next to neighbouring garages rather than habitable downstairs rooms, as is the case here. In fact, extensions are more typically into the generous back gardens and therefore don't imply intrusive access into adjacent property for construction work, as has been touched on elsewhere. So in conclusion, I believe that the proposals for extending should be radically rethought. Thank you.
Very much. Mr. Arnold, you didn't say where you live, but I presume it's number 2?
I apologise. Yes, Mr. Arnold, number 2. So my property is the only one significantly affected.
Yeah.
By the...
And did you say that you would be blocked from some sunlight? Sorry.
Yes, for the whole of the morning. Yes.
Sorry.
For the whole of the morning.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Councillors, any further questions of clarification? Councillor Edwards.
One quick, I hope, clarification. Confirm how many windows other than
Southern southeast, in fact, is the one affected. Yes.
I mean the one next to number 3.
It's 4 windows to 3 rooms. That's downstairs windows. They're the only ones that are significantly affected.
I think there are any further questions, so thank you very much for coming along today.
Thank you
if
very
you'd
much.
like to go back to your original seat. And the next public speaker is one of the ward councillors, Councillor Mike Krask. Morning, Councillor Krask. And when you're ready, you have 5 minutes. The clock will come up on the screen.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, and good morning to all councillors. I think firstly, I have a great deal of sympathy with what Mr. Arnold has been speaking about with you today. I think it's been very reasonable in terms of his objections. I think I've firstly got to say that I'm disappointed with the approach the applicant has taken here, and the very aggressive design, I think, for me. There's been no pre-planning application or meaningful engagement. And while I think we'd all welcome development on the site, it's much needed, as you can see from what's there right now. But it's clear from the statement submitted that the cost, the design and build is a major factor. And to my mind, all that's been done is to drop in a template design with little creativity or sensitivity. There has been some adjustment from the original initial application, but to my mind, without the pre-planning application, once it's in the system, it makes it very difficult for it makes it very difficult for the officers to have really an optimal impact on that design. I think you can see from the objections from the other neighbours who've been in the area for some time that they know this is wrong, and that any argument that there's a precedent for this design is misleading. There is no precedent, double height extensions, that block sunlight directly into habitable rooms. I think if you take a look at page 113 of the pack, I think the first thing that strikes me about Godwin Close is the character. Character, for me, the word that springs out is sensitivity. There's no full width, double height, roofed buildings in the plots. There's a great deal of effort that's been made to be sensitive to adjoining properties. I think the one that I would call out as an exception to that is probably picture 17 on page 113, which is a very modern new design. I don't take issue in the materials used, either in that design or in the one that's proposed today. But you can see there that is built against a building which is in the same orientation as Mr. Arnold's, but it's against a flat brick wall where the downstairs is used as a garage, not as habitable rooms. And that really is the issue that I think Mr. Arnold has, is that this double height extension is being built against habitable rooms. And I think it's very helpfully sent across in advance pictures, which demonstrate the mass that would be built against those three rooms. And you can see from the pictures the living that goes on in those rooms. They're not garage. It's not a garage. They've orientated the house, the Arnolds, to make use of the sunlight coming in. And you can see from those pictures that they are totally habitable rooms. There's piano lessons given in one of the rooms as an example, as you can see. So I think, to my mind, I have great confidence in the rejection and suggesting the rejection of this proposal here. I think the applicant would have been better off to reference a recent application next door at number 4 Godwin, which received no objections from neighbours but built into the garden. It's a very long garden, and there's opportunity to build into the garden, as was done at number 4, where there were no objections and a lot of creativity and sensitivity. So I'd be very happy to support rejection, and I'm going to refer to previous rejections that this committee has made at Downlands Road, and I'll quote from, and not only was it rejected, but it was upheld at appeal. An inspectorate refers to, by reason of height, bulk and proximity to the shared boundary with Hampton Lane, the proposed replacement dwelling and rear extension would be resulting in a substantial predominant blank side elevation, which would be overly dominant and oppressive. In my view, this would have an overbearing and enclosing impact on the residents of Hampton Lane. According to the appeal scheme, would be significant harmful to living conditions. And then goes on to reference, accordingly, it will conflict with policy DM17, which amongst other things requires that development does not have unacceptable adverse impact on adjoining property by reasons of overshadowing or being overbearing. So that's one appeal decision that supported your similar rejection previously. You've had another rejection supported and validated recently also at Takedown Meads, very much about the character of the property. And I think that both of these refer to policy CP13 of the local plan part 1.
Councillor Krask, you're out of time.
Thank you.
I'll have to stop you there. Thank you. Councillors, any questions of clarification from what Councillor Krask has said? No. Thank you very much for coming along today. Now we have Porters, Caleb Lewington and Charlie Wham. Are you both speaking? Sorry. Right. So it's not Caleb Lewington and Charlie Wham. Warn. Oh, it's my eyesight. I've forgotten my glasses today. So, I should have said good morning or good afternoon. We are now. And you will have 3 minutes to address the committee, and you can share the 3 minutes how you like. The clock will come up on the screen as soon as you start speaking, but I'll have to stop you after 3 minutes. So when you're Thank you. I think we're ready, are we? No? Yes. Thank you. Ready.
Hi, thank you. So we have already submitted a statement, but that was before we realised we'd have the opportunity to speak to you all today. We just wanted to reiterate some of our thought process in the design that we've submitted. It's not just a template. Our architects spent many, many hours looking at different revised designs to get to a place where we were happy with our overall look and feel. Cost is a consideration that we have to think about with the current economic environment and how costs have escalated. Cost to us is important, we have to consider it, but also we're trying to make the best use of the existing space available that we have. We feel that by building above the garage, we're utilising the space. It's more sustainable and affordable as opposed to building out the back. We've been very considerate in our design, and it's definitely not a template. As mentioned, and as you'd have seen from previous pictures, there's an existing boundary wall, so we're just extending above an existing garage. One of the other points that we just wanted to further clarify, other houses do have double-storey extensions along Godwin Close, but there have been some comments, and particularly today, with the overall look and feel and the character of the street. It's massively important to us that we work and fit in and build a house that isn't out of character. We're not trying to be overbearing, we're just trying to build a family home. The pictures submitted show how varied the design and development of other properties are across the close. There's a very different look and feel with each type of property. They're all detached houses, they all look completely different, which in our view is a completely positive point to raise. We feel that our design adds and enhances a developing and diverse close. We've also, just to reiterate, been working with the planning officer, and we did submit new and revised designs to accommodate points raised by number 2. The revised design does reduce our planned internal space and bedroom size, which we're massively lacking at the moment. We hope the compromise will be recognised. Number 3, Godwin Close, is in need of significant modification, and we really aim to create a workable living family home.
Just take the opportunity further the point around, we did certainly try and engage with prior to us
Sorry, that's time.
Thank you very much. Councillors, any questions of clarification? I think I have one. I have actually visited the road, but the first two photos that you showed us, yeah, so that's the first one that is with the, that's number 5 Godwin Close, I see.
Yeah, that's right. You've got number 5 and number 6. So number 6 is on the right and number 5's on the left. So you've not had to go very far from the outhouse to find 2 examples of extensions up to the boundary.
And is the gap between the houses there, between 5 and 6, the same as between 3 and 2?
I don't know. I apologise. I think I would say they're probably small. My view, it's smaller. And having lived there and living there and passing it, it looks smaller to me.
I had a further question. And that one, number 7, there are no upstairs windows. The house next door, which is at number 6, or?
Yeah, so that would be number 6,
Yeah.
but it looks like there's a downstairs window.
But no, nothing upstairs. Thank you. Any further questions? No. So thank you very much for coming along
Thank you.
today. If you'd like to. Marge, anything you'd like?
I just wanted to clarify, when you asked about the gap, I think the relationship between number 2 and 3 is very unique, since it's number 2 is a front-facing gable, and they have a 3-meter gap to their side boundary. And so it appeared, I haven't measured between the other 2 houses, it looked like that was much more shallow. But we're obviously not proposing to build that close to another building.
Thank you. So we will then go on to page 91, Principle of Development. It's a question there. So impact on character and appearance of the. Councillor Pearson.
There's just one very simple question, Chairman. Actually, you referred in your presentation, Marge, windows and doors. Are you suggesting then the whole house now must have dark grey? Just the extension? Sounds a bit odd.
My understanding is, since the entire house is changing its materials, it will simulate the frames to match the extension. So the frames will be dark gray with its white brick and timber cladding.
Have nods from the applicant.
Yeah, it's
all changing.
Now the neighbour's got some surplus paint again. The only house of all the pictures is going to have grey. The others are white.
Personal choice, Councillor Pearson. Any further questions on the neighbouring impact on character? If not, historic environment. I think neighbouring amenity. I have a question. The last paragraph on page 92, talking about rear bedroom, Juliet balcony with sideline.
It's the 2 glazing panels. So they have 2 double doors and then glazing panels.
Not lights, but windows.
Right. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Whitford.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is relevant at this point, but you'll tell me if it's not. And it's the question of the light. I mean, clearly the sunlight impact on the property has been brought up. And neighbour. Question to Marge is, what assessment has done on the impact to the neighbour of loss of sunlight to your interpretation?
Although there wasn't a formal light assessment requested, the dwellings do follow linear. So there is building works at 2-story southwest of number 2, the neighbor's dwelling. But what was considered is that the fact that the wall is moving closer to the boundary. So while it was recognized that some natural light will be reduced, it wasn't considered to a level of harm that would require any further recommendations other than what has been proposed with moving it back from the boundary and away from that 45-degree angle to the lower ground floor windows.
Thank you for that. So what you're telling me that it is subjective, that you've done, and nobody's done any particular measurement of the impact of the light, the building coming to the full height adjacent to number 2, and the impact of light in 2. So there's no formal work being done, an assessment. It is subjective at this stage.
It's not officers. It's an objective assessment based on material planning considerations, and that's what you have in front of you. And
Apologies for that, and I take that back then. So, but there's been no formal measurement of the impact, if that's okay, just to clarify.
No, all the details of the application has been submitted online.
On that note, can I just have clarification? When Councillor Westwood is asking about formal light assessment, when are those undertaken?
In my experience, if the building works, for example, the original application, building at full height, full gable end, was above and beyond that 45-degree angle. Although I'm not a building expert or construction person, we planning officers sometimes go by those rule of thumbs. And in that stage, I would have requested a formal sunlight assessment. But instead, we reduced the application, pushed it away, and reduced the gable.
if I could just add, Chair, there's no statutory requirement for that. So it is an assessment that your officers and then this committee have to make based on the plan.
Any further questions on neighbouring immediate? A lot of the report is about number 2, quite rightly, because it's going to. Looked at the and application.
Yes, Chair.
So
Sorry, Chair, can I ask your microphone to be put on?
Sustainable transport, page 93. Turn my mic off because it reduces the sound of speaking. Turn it back on. Ecology and biodiversity. Would there be any possibility? Third box.
I'm not quite sure how to answer that because we only recommend biodiversity enhancements where there is a significant change. Because this is a residential property with, we've researched our biodiversity information and databases. There's no trees or hedges to be removed. It's difficult for me to propose any further enhancement within the dwelling.
Condition 4 addresses it anyway. Condition 4 addresses it.
Okay.
Condition 4, if you read that, it talks about nesting sites for birds.
Yes, but I'm asking about bird boxes on the building, not asking trees.
Yeah, I think it would be difficult. Couldn't suggest.
I would, if approved, I would like to suggest some consideration be given to birds which are in rapid decline. The approach. Drainage, any questions? Drainage? Anything else in the condition? Not, then we'll move to debate. Any contributions to debate? Okay, I'm going to support the application. I do understand the concerns of Arnold, but I do feel that the second application has addressed a lot of those points, and there are a lot of extensions, similar extensions, in the close. Good councillor and there's no other comment from anyone, so this application has been recommended for approval. Those in favour, please show.
Uh, 9 unanimous, Chair.
Okay, so that application has been approved. Much. Oh yes, and oh yes. Can I have the committee's view on adding an informative? That consideration be given to avian wildlife, either bat box, swift boxes, or hedge sparrow box.
Can't see the point personally. Can't see the point personally. It's just adding cost to the bill.
Can't see the point of.
I can't see the point of that informative. It is adding cost to the bill.
The point is addressing the dramatic decline of those 3 species.
Well, the swifts, we have more swifts in Bishop's Waltham this year than we've ever had, and the nest boxes are all being filled. So
that isn't the national picture. So could I please have a vote on the informative? Very unusual. Those in favour of adding an informative to point out the necessity of having some sort of biodiversity gain here with a swift box, hedge sparrows, or not, then asking the Bishop's Waltham swifts to move up.
They prefer living in Bishop's Waltham.
Those in favour of that import. Those against. So that's approved as well. Thank you very much. We move on to the last application of the day. Morning. Oh yes, of course. So we move on to agenda item 9. I'm going to take 9, and the last one is obviously 10, because they are the same, but one's a listed building application. I'm going to take 9 and 10 together. No new information in either. And this is 22/00025-HOU, and I haven't got the last one. So this would be 22/00026. The list for listed. The Old Vicarage Main Road, Pursley. Installation of charge point for one vehicle and landscape changes, including a pergola. Case officer is Cameron Taylor. When you're ready, Cameron, we're ready to hear the presentation.
Thank you very much, Chair. So the presentation is for the installation of an electric vehicle charging point and landscape change pergola at the Old Vicarage. These points do require planning permission because it is in the curtilage of a listed building, as Old Vicarage is a Grade 2 listed. Here we have the location plan, with the Old Vicarage located off the south of a private access, with All Saints Church located to the east of the property, with Main Road further to the east of All Saints. Main Road running through Hursley, further to the east of All Saints Church. Next, we have an aerial photograph with the site marked by the yellow triangle, which we can see the dense vegetation which sort of goes around the boundary of the property itself. And again, we can see the location of the Main Road running through Hursley, location to the Old Church with the property, along with Meriden Close located to the south of the property itself. Next, we have the floor plan. EV point, charging point located, marked by the blue circle, to the left-hand side of that photo. Whilst those red arrows were photos used in which the pictures for the original scheme, however, it had been amended, which relocated the location of the EV charging point, so those red arrows are no longer valid in this instance. Relevant location of the charging point. We have a photo looking toward the front elevation of the property, with the left one showing the full property. Right-hand photo focusing on the modern extension of the listed building. Followed by, we have a photo of the charging point, which is in situ, which is the modern extension of the property itself, relocated as it was originally set coming off heritage asset. Next, we have the location plan, where on the bottom we can see the rear of the property. So yes, the rear elevation of the dwelling itself, with the pergola located along the eastern boundary of the site itself, with various other alterations to landscaping down the existing pathway to the rear. Here we have plans and image showing the scale and appearance of the pergola proposed, followed by the photos of the landscape rear, the left-hand photo from the rear of the property down towards the southern boundary, right-hand photo looking back up towards the property itself. I note that the title of this slide is actually incorrect. I say this is looking from the east, we're along the eastern side of the property itself, looking towards the southern boundary. Left-hand photo, the property itself, right-hand side, with a small planter, which I'm circling with the mouse, which the pergola will be located. With the right-hand photo looking directly south, vegetation on the left being along the eastern boundary, and again, circular planter being the location pergola. That concludes my presentation, with the officer's recommendation being for approval. Thank you.
Very much. We have no public speakers, either application. So questions on anything? I won't do No? So, Kate? So this application is recommended for approval. Those in favour, please show.
Unanimous, Chair.
Unanimous?
Yes,
Yeah.
9, yeah.
So that application or these applications are approved. So
Chair,
that
sorry,
brings
Chair,
us.
may I just interrupt there? I think form we should take a.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you.
So the two numbers up again. Save me. Right. So we'll do it again. Okay. So the first one, 22-00025. Those in favour of approval, please show.
9 unanimous for.
Is that yes, David? Okay, yeah. Then you put it down again. And then the good exercise. I didn't see it. And the second one, it is 00026. That's the listed building. Those in favour of that one?
Yeah, that's again 9 unanimous for, Chair.
And those. So that brings us to the end of the morning planning session.